Today marks the one-year anniversary of the Mount Pinatubo eruption. We are joined today by an incredible group of researchers who are on the front lines of the eruption.
Here's a look at some of the videos they captured.
Wow guys, isn't it such a nice day?
Wait, we shouldn't go over there.
Wait, why not?
Because I felt an earthquake yesterday and
It's really dangerous.
yeah, the volcano's over there.
Wait, that means the volcano's about to erupt. Wasn't
Yeah,
there like
so
gas
we
coming out of the ground too? Like sulfur dioxide?
Yeah, so we should go.
No, I'm gonna go record it.
No.
It's a bad idea.
That's a bad idea.
I'm gonna go.
No.
Whoa. Wait, maybe I shouldn't be this close. Wait. Oh my god, I'm gonna die.
That's why you should always be cautious and remember to evacuate and be safe.
We are now joined by a panel of experts who will help us understand more about Mount Pinatubo and volcanoes in general. Hi guys, thank you for coming. Hi Professor Quake, what can you tell us about the eruption?
Hi, thank you for having me.
On June 15, 1991, Mount Pinatubo erupted in a spectacular fashion. Located on Luzon Island in the Philippines, this stratovolcano erupted for the first time in nearly 500 years. Standing at 1,760 meters tall, this was the second largest eruption in the 20th century. The eruption sent tons of sulfur dioxide and lots of magma and ash into the atmosphere, dropping worldwide temperatures by 1.5 degrees Celsius from 1991 through 1993. There were a lot of warning signs leading up to the eruption. There was a major 7.8 magnitude earthquake the year before near the summit, and thousands of smaller earthquakes in the months leading up to the eruption, and a lot of sulfur dioxide that leaked from the summit. There was an earthquake on June 6th that resulted in puffs of smoke being pushed out of the volcano. On June 12th, Philippine Independence Day, an eruption occurred that resulted in a lot of ash and more eruptions that followed. On June 15th, the volcano erupted with ash being blown 28 miles into the air as pyroclastic flows violently flowed out of the volcano. A small caldera was formed nearby because of all the magma that was displaced. Lavas flowed in rivers and destroyed buildings, cars, and bridges as the sky darkened. It was a massive humanitarian challenge trying to evacuate the people who lived nearby. The goal of the evacuations was to make sure people were completely safe from harm, so they were evacuated to Naval Station Subic Bay and Naval Air Station Cubai Point beginning on June 10th.
Thank you for coming, Professor Earth. What can you tell us about the formation and location of Mount Pinatubo?
Hi there, it's a pleasure to be here.
Mount Pinatubo sits on the boundary between the Eurasian and Philippine plate. The subducting Philippine plate will begin to melt under the heat and pressure of the Eurasian crust, causing it to become magma. Eventually, this magma, which is less dense than solid rock, will eventually resurface through tiny cracks leading to an eruption. Like the previous expert stated, Mount Pinatubo is a stratovolcano, which are volcanoes comprised of several layers of ash and lava. Stratovolcanoes tend to be very explosive. Pressure typically builds up in the magma chamber and conduits before it's finally released, exploding like a can of soda. The lava that flows from this volcano tends to be very viscous and is often rhyolithic, having a high level of silica, making it very explosive. Mount Pinatubo first erupted in 33,000 BC. This volcano is still active today. The 1991 eruption caused the collapse of the dome and the formation of a caldera. Annual monsoons have filled this caldera, resulting in a beautiful crater lake that attracts thousands of tourists and hikers every year.
Now we're joined with our third researcher, Professor Tai. We're happy to have you.
Hi, I'm glad to be here.
So what can you tell us about the short-term impacts of Mount Pinatubo's eruption?
More than 800 people were killed by the 1991 eruption, and to make matters worse, a typhoon hit the Philippines the same time as the eruption. This death toll would have been higher if it weren't for the U.S. Geological Survey, who saved an estimated 5,000 lives by forecasting this eruption early. Following the eruption, the inhabitants of the island returned to their towns buried in thick lahars and ash. There were over $700 million in damage and nearly 20,000 indigenous Ada Highlanders who lived on the slopes of the volcanoes that were completely displaced. There have been major reforestation efforts after the eruption destroyed 150 square kilometers of forest and farmland. Rice paddies and sugarcane fields were buried by the lahars, and over 800,000 pigs, cows, and chickens were killed by the eruption, devastating the local food supply. The long-term effects of the Mount Pinatubo eruption can be classified into two categories: economic losses and the destruction of the environment. The economic losses were colossal. An estimated 651,000 people were unemployed. Clark Air Base, one of the largest in the world, famous as a base of operation in the Vietnam War, was rendered unusable and had to be abandoned. One of the most dramatic results of the eruptions was the massive movement of ash and pumice caused by typhoons in later years. Of the estimated 1.7 to 2.4 cubic miles of material accumulated on the slopes of the volcano, 70% has been swept away and carried downhill in the form of immense mudflows or lahars. These mudflows buried towns, knocked down power lines, swept away roads, and caused more victims than the eruptions did.
And now we have our final researcher, Professor Food. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
What can you tell us about this eruption and how it compares to other eruptions?
As previously stated, this eruption was the second largest volcanic eruption in the 20th century. Additionally, it was the largest eruption ever to affect a densely populated area. Mount Pinatubo's eruption was the biggest atmospheric disruption since the 1883 Krakatoa eruption. In fact, it injected more particulate into the stratosphere than any other eruption since Krakatoa. Even after 5 years, the eruption continued to affect the area by causing mudflows. On the Volcanic Explosivity Index, it was rated a 6, making it a more powerful eruption than Mount Vesuvius and Mount St. Helens. Mount Pinatubo was approximately 10 times larger than the Mount St. Helens eruption. However, in terms of economic impact, Mount Pinatubo pales in comparison to the funds lost to the Mount St. Helens eruption. An approximate $375 million was lost due to the Mount Pinatubo eruption, whereas Mount St. Helens caused around $1.1 billion in damages.